This week's episode of our show is sponsored by World Anvil. World Anvil is a web-based world-building and RPG campaign management platform.
Using World Anvil, you can create, organize, and fully detail every aspect of your campaign world. You can build customizable entries for key locations, important NPCs and organizations, historical timelines, calendars, and even fully annotated maps, and store it all securely online.
More than just a way to prepare your games, World Anvil helps you running your games at the table too, using the storyteller's screen, which puts all the most important information at your fingertips, from key NPCs to important clues and reminders, as well as giving you an easy way to share information and handouts with your players.
An account at World Anvil is free, letting you get a feeling for all the features of the platform. A premium subscription allows you to create more and larger worlds with advanced features to customize and share your creations.
Follow the links in the description below or visit worldanvil.com to try it out for free today.
And now, onto this week's episode.
Greetings, my name is Monty Martin.
And I'm Kelly McLaughlin.
And we are the Dungeon Dudes. Welcome to our channel where we cover everything Dungeons & Dragons, including advice for players and guides for dungeon masters.
We upload new videos every Thursday, so please subscribe to our channel so that you never miss an episode.
Today, we are tackling a big issue head on, and that is how to play Dungeons & Dragons online.
There is a growing interest in being able to play Dungeons & Dragons online with your friends who live either close to you or very far away. And today we're going to look at some of the key tools and things that you need to keep in mind when you're setting out to play in a digital format.
Playing Dungeons & Dragons online can be as just a connected and special experience as playing together in person. There are many different ways that you can improve the online experience when playing with friends and family across the globe, and we're going to talk about how you can use these to make your next online Dungeons & Dragons game the full and complete D&D experience it deserves to be. There's lots to discuss, so let's get rolling.
When a lot of people first set out to play Dungeons & Dragons online, the first thing that they do is they look up virtual tabletops and various softwares that allow them to create digital maps and tools to use online. However, this can be very cumbersome and can actually overwhelm a lot of people who are brand new to this concept of digital D&D.
The thing is that virtual tabletops are the equivalent of maps and miniatures and terrain for real-world Dungeons & Dragons. Just like miniatures and terrain, they add a lot to the experience, but are actually completely optional. And how much you want to use things like virtual tabletops when you play Dungeons & Dragons online is really something that varies based on the experience that you want to have. And just like I would never recommend a brand new player to Dungeons & Dragons go out and spend hundreds of dollars in miniatures and start learning how to paint minis and build their own terrain, I don't necessarily think it's necessary to learn how to use a virtual tabletop and start making beautiful battle maps and online environments to play in to get really into the meat of playing Dungeons & Dragons with your friends online. We can take a much simpler approach that gets us right into the game.
The beautiful thing about Dungeons & Dragons is that it is a game comprised of the shared imagination of the people playing it. So really, when we add in things like virtual tabletops or other options like that, this is all just extra beyond the theater of the mind setting that we can often use and has often been used in Dungeons & Dragons. Really, all that you need to play D&D with your friends is a face-to-face connection. Anything beyond that is just extra.
I agree. I think the face-to-face nature of Dungeons & Dragons is really brilliant. And fortunately, we live in a digital age where there are so many digital tools, pieces of equipment that we can use to connect in a face-to-face-like manner, even though we are separated by thousands of miles apart. As long as you've got a really good internet connection, a halfway decent webcam, and the built-in microphone on your computer or an external microphone, I think you're probably good to go with everything that you need.
That's really all you need to start playing Dungeons & Dragons online. But we do get a lot of questions about what sort of software or cameras or microphones we actually prefer to use for a digital setting.
We're going to need some sort of software to actually get in on that voice and video chat call. And Kelly and I have tried out a few different ones for playing D&D online, and the short answer is all of them work pretty well, and I think it's up to the individual preferences of your group which one you're going to use.
And those options, the 4 that we think are the main ones that you should look at, are Discord, Skype, Google Hangouts, or Zoom.
What's nice about all of these pieces of software is that they'll work with the built-in microphones on your computer or even your phone in most cases. And if you do want to connect in a better webcam or better microphone, all of these pieces of software will pick those up just as well. And they'll give you this really nice looking interface where you can see every individual person right there in front of you and chat with each other in pretty good real time. I find that even with Skype and Discord and Zoom, the time delay and the lag is pretty minimal, although I do prefer using it still on a wired high-speed internet connection.
There are a lot of ways to use these programs, and as a matter of fact, I even ran an entire campaign for a group of new players who lived in a different city than me, and they all got together at their friend's house, and then I Skyped in as the DM over a big screen TV through Skype. And all that happened is they all have iPads on them, and any images or NPCs or character portraits that I had, I would simply just text to them through my computer. They would all receive it, and them sitting in their room, they could share it around and look at it together. So there were a lot of different ways that you can actually manage this sort of workflow. And even if it's just one person Skyping in to another group, or if you are using any sort of texting or messaging format to relay information back and forth or share images, it could be a really convenient and handy way.
Yeah, I personally think the best way to do it still is to make a Discord server for your own campaign, and that way you've got everybody together on Discord, you can share information, and it means that outside game night, you can even communicate and chat. I know over the years, Kelly, you and I have tried using things like Facebook Messenger and email, and those things are actually kind of nightmares compared to how easy it was with Discord. I found that we just really used it much more naturally for our groups in planning out the next steps and sharing information with each other. There's something just about the way Discord is organized, especially compared to Facebook Messenger and other forms of messaging, where I think we were really able to stay on the same page with each other with a chat app like Discord a lot better compared to the other ones. Beyond software, your computer or phone, and a good internet connection, the only other piece of gear that I would consider truly indispensable for playing Dungeons & Dragons online is a really good pair of headphones.
It is actually funny how important spending a good amount of money on a good pair of headphones is. If you buy a cheaper pair of headphones, I have found that I'm very excited because this set of headphones has great quality and it's only like $50, and I'll buy them, and then after about an hour of playing online, my ears start to hurt, my head starts to hurt. It's just a very uncomfortable experience. And if this is something that you're pursuing long term, investing in a good pair of headphones that you can wear for hours on end is essential for your own comfort and enjoyment of the game.
You might want to get a pair of headphones that does have a built-in microphone as well. There's also microphones that you can attach to headphones as well, which are excellent. And definitely getting a good microphone is a really excellent add-on for a group of people that are playing Dungeons & Dragons together regularly. Particularly, one of the things that I find really difficult about playing D&D online is when people have poor quality microphones that have a lot of noise in the background, and everybody kind of gets that hum in their heads, and it actually hurts my ears after a while. So if your whole group upgrades their microphones to ones that have a low amount of noise, that makes it much easier on the ears for everybody as well.
So a lot of people ask us what we use at home, and for our mic setup, we are actually both using an AT2020 USB microphone, which is really great at capturing sound. It's not too expensive, and the quality you're going to get is phenomenal. In terms of webcams, we've actually both invested in Logitech C920 webcams, which are both stellar quality and affordable, and we found that these two together work really well and have given us everything we need to play digitally.
These small things like improving the visual quality and the audio quality of your online game actually really add a lot to the overall experience and make that connection between you and the people that are on the other side of the world that much more intimate. It makes you feel like you're really there with each other. I like to have a big monitor for my game, and I blow everything up and full screen that so I can really see everybody face to face. And it really does start to feel after a while like you are sitting at a table with each other. It kind of all starts to melt away. But if you have a really bad audio quality and a really bad internet connection, it really gets in the way of all this. So those are things that you want to address so that you can really play nicely with each other.
Now that we have all of our gear and all of the software that we need to start playing D&D, let's get to all the extra things, all the tools and assets that you might want around you or using digitally to enhance what playing D&D online can be. And the first question is going to be how to keep track of your character sheets. And I actually think something that Monty and I have found to be a really beautiful resource, if you can spend a little bit of money to get into it, is D&D Beyond.
And really only one person in the group needs to make the investment to unlock all the books and all the content, because you can do the content sharing through D&D Beyond and invite everybody into one campaign. So everybody can see each other's character sheets. You all know who's got what, and you can then have your web browser up alongside Skype or Discord and have your character sheet right there and your whole party with you on screen as well. I think these two together are like peanut butter and jelly. They're basically the core package of what you need.
The other beautiful thing is if you are the dungeon master, being able to keep track of where all the players' hit points are at, what their strengths and weaknesses are. It's all just right there on the website. Not only that, but if you are a DM, D&D Beyond gives you a digital format to look up any monster stat, any book that you buy on there. You can actually go through the entire campaign modules on D&D Beyond. It has access to everything that you would have access to in the books that you purchase, and you can actually buy the books through D&D Beyond for a more affordable price, gaining that access and just being able to click a few buttons.
Yeah, I think it's probably the Rolls Royce of options out there. I know there are a lot of free character sheet applications and there's ways of creating digital character sheets, but none of them integrate with the actual rules, the full rule set of Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. There are other ones that are out there that are free, but they only have what's contained in the basic rules because D&D kind of has the monopoly on this, aside from the licenses that are given to some virtual tabletops. So it for me is the best online repository of the rules of Dungeons & Dragons as a whole.
So beyond managing your character sheets, the next big question is how are you going to manage dice rolls? And there are a few different ways you can go with this. Some people just like to work on the honor system and have everybody just roll at their table, at their home, and announce what the rolls are. If you have a little bit less trust for whether or not your friends are going to tell you the honest answer to what they're rolling, there are some great online resources to help you out with managing dice rolls.
So there are many online die roller tools. One of my favorites is Roll Dice with Friends, because you can create a chat room in here and roll dice right on it and share those results with each other. There's also Discord bots that you can use to roll dice as well. I think this is another point up for Discord as well, because you can do your die rolls in Discord using dice bots and chat commands, and then you can all see them already anyways too. So those tools there, I think if you aren't comfortable with the honor system and rolling physical dice, I personally like having my physical dice. I don't mind rolling them right there and hearing those die rolls and trusting each other. But if you got some trust issues, you want to use an online die roller, I would either go with a bot in Discord that can recognize the chat command or use Roll Dice with Friends.
So with all this in mind, the next big question is, do you love theater of the mind and are you comfortable running that at your D&D game? If the answer is yes, you now have everything you need to start playing D&D online. But a lot of players and a lot of dungeon masters do prefer the option of having a setup board with miniatures on it. Since we're looking at digital online options, there are a lot of virtual tabletop software options out there to help out with building a map and knowing where your players and enemies are.
There have been many emerge over the years, but I think the two top dogs right now in the virtual tabletop world are probably Fantasy Grounds and Roll20. These ones have been on the market for a very long time and probably are where the most people gravitate to for virtual tabletops, not the least of which because both Roll20 and Fantasy Grounds have an official license for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, which means that you can get the full rule set and the expansion books and many of the adventure modules for these platforms.
These platforms actually allow you to really easily keep track of where people are on the maps. You can place tokens and you can place figures and load in any sort of map you want. If you create your own maps or design them using some software online, you can load them into these systems and allow your players to share them with you. You can have notes for you as a dungeon master that the players can't see, and it really gives you all the things you would need at the table if you had your dungeon master screen, the board, the minis. You can use all of these types of features in a digital format using these websites.
The one thing that I will say is that Roll20 is completely free and easy to use if you're not going to sign up for all the actual real rule books in there. So Roll20, you and your entire group can sign up for a free account. You can play games completely free online. You can schedule them all right on there, import your own graphics, import your own stuff, and have a perfectly awesome and free experience. Whereas Fantasy Grounds is not free for at least one person in the group. Somebody in the group is either going to need to have an Ultimate Fantasy Grounds license, or everybody in the group is going to need to have a standard Fantasy Grounds license. And then after that, like D&D Beyond, you still have to buy the books that you want to integrate if you want to integrate in to the character sheet and the character token system that these platforms have. If you don't want to keep track of the character sheets in Roll20 or Fantasy Grounds, you can just use them as a map and a token field, but that's not really taking full advantage of everything these platforms have to offer. The flip side of this is that I do think the learning curve is a little bit high for both these pieces of software. I poked around with both Fantasy Grounds and Roll20 for days and days on end, and I still felt it was going to be another fair bit of work before I was ready to actually run a campaign on these platforms. Whereas I felt completely confident to just jump in and play Theater of the Mind on my own without using them at all.
At the end of the day, though, there are a lot of players and DMs out there who really, really enjoy the visual aspect of playing D&D. And it can be a lot easier to keep track of who is where in a room when you have this sort of setup. So if you do want to take the time and effort to learn either Roll20 or Fantasy Grounds, it could be well worth it for your digital D&D games.
It does take a fair amount of time to get everything ready and going on these platforms to run almost anything in a campaign aside from the official modules, but it is worth it. And as someone myself, I love using terrain and miniatures in my physical games. And I do love having that visual element, and I love using a battle map for combat. So it is one of those things that if you like those elements in your face-to-face games, you might really find that the investment in getting these things up and running is completely worth it.
As our final point, when we're talking about playing D&D in an online format, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the etiquette associated with running D&D in general. And something that we have learned is that all of the nuances of the table etiquette that you have when you play in person should still be applied to an online format, even though the online format can feel a little bit different. And sitting at your computer means that there can be a lot of distractions. So let's talk a little bit about the etiquette of online D&D and some things that you should do to stay focused on the game in front of you.
You are sitting in front of a screen, and one of the hardest things when you're playing Dungeons & Dragons online is to fight the temptation to open up social media, go on Facebook, check the news, look at other websites, scroll through Reddit. Close that stuff down and pay attention. If you wouldn't be on Reddit or Facebook or on a website at your physical table, don't do that during an online game either.
Also, if you are the kind of player who's on Facebook at your physical table, then we need to have a talk. Or you should watch our video on principles for players. But the other thing to keep in mind is try to avoid any distractions that are happening around you. If you are dedicating a space to set up for an online digital game, you want to make sure that that space doesn't have people or, people walking in and out, making a lot of noise. It can not only be distracting for yourself, but also the other people who are trying to play D&D online with you. If you have somebody in the back room doing laundry and you can hear all sorts of commotion and everything, then, it's going to take away from the D&D game that you're playing. So everybody needs to be committed to that sort of environment and try to set yourself up in an environment where there's less distractions.
Part of this can be a bit of a scheduling problem and making sure that you're scheduling a game time that is respectful of the other people that live in your home with you. But on the flip side, sitting on the headphone side of things sounds like dogs or pets barking in the background, someone banging around plates, or someone else talking in the background, or worst of all, eating into the microphone. These sound awful and really impair the experience for everybody. So if there is noise in the background, don't forget that all of these applications let you press the mute button on yourself.
Nothing else could be as frustrating for everybody else with headphones on. So mute your mic if you're going to eat a bunch of chips between your turns.
And the other thing is to take turns. Crosstalk at the table is a problem for face-to-face groups, but crosstalk amongst players in an online environment is even worse. This is actually why having the visual representation of each other and having the video chat is really important to playing D&D online really, really well, because you can see each other's body language and you know when someone is done speaking, and then it's your turn to chime in. So having the ability to actually see each other makes it much easier to take turns so that people aren't speaking over each other, because over voice comms, that crosstalk really creates a lot of noise quite quickly.
So at the end of the day, keep all of this in mind. The etiquette that you use at your gaming table should carry over to a digital format, and even more so, because all those little sounds, all the eating and all the dice ruffling around through your dice bag for 10 minutes trying to find the right dice to roll, these are all things that are amplified by having a microphone and a camera pointed at you. So be aware of your surroundings, find a quiet place, and dedicate yourself to playing D&D the same way that you would if you were sitting around that table with your friends. The Dungeon Masters often put a lot of work, and if they are using something like Roll20 or Fantasy Grounds, keep in mind how much work they are putting into creating an elaborate game and a story to tell you. So be polite and follow the etiquette of your games even when you're playing D&D online.
I agree. I find that this is the biggest success strategy. When I started trying to play games of Dungeons & Dragons online, I think the most difficult thing was just how quickly the etiquette just completely got forgot about. We have a great table etiquette in our in-person games, and just remembering that that table etiquette from your in-person games still applies, and even more so in an online environment, is really the key to building that connection. Once you're actually there in the moment, role-playing with each other, hearing each other's voices, being able to see each other's faces, those connections will just totally build up. And I do think that having that voice chat and that video chat are so essential to making that magic come to life with each other, even in a virtual environment.
So this has been a look at our top tips for running Dungeons & Dragons online. One thing we didn't really cover in this episode is how to create virtual tabletops. If you have any interest in learning more about that, let us know in the comments below so that we can create a future video on that topic.
If you're enjoying our show, please consider supporting our work on Patreons. The generous support of our patrons makes this work possible, and if you would like to join that community, please check us out at patreon.com/dungeon_dudes or by following the links below.
And don't forget to check out our live play campaign, which airs Tuesday nights at 6 p.m. Eastern at twitch.tv/dungeon_dudes. And you can find all the previous episodes of that show right up over here.
And we have plenty more tips for Dungeon Masters running games of D&D right up over here.
Please subscribe to our channel so that you never miss an episode.
Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time in the dungeon.